to bed.
So if anybody comes.
Peanut. Hey.
Hello, anybody coming?
Go away.
Of course, Peanut's in there yelling now. She's been so quiet the whole time I haven't been reading. Now tonight I want to read a couple stories. She's going to start the whining.
So it's like this every night.
Hi guys. Want a couple of old stories?
Peanut. Peanut.
Here we go. Hi Tracy B. This is a kid's utopia.
You're gonna finish these.
No, you can have them. Here's John sitting in the lifeguard's rowboat used at the lake in Lamar Park. There we go. The little kid sitting in the rowboat. In the 1950s, when I grew up in Wyoming Park, a small suburb south of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Situated 2 blocks from the business section is Lamar Park. It had anything and everything a kid could wish for. A large pond served as our swimming and fishing hole. Any type of kids' playground apparatus was available. Swings, slides, jungle gyms, merry-go-rounds, and monkey bars. There was also a small wood-clad baseball stadium, circa 1930s, where 500 fans could watch organized baseball games while drinking soda pop and eating popcorn. We kids also used the diamond for our sandlot games. With tennis courts, a softball diamond, and a frog-infested creek running through the entire park, it was a kid's utopia. The entire park was grass covered. This guy isn't writing that exciting, which required large mowers to be active 2 days a week. Oh, blah, 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 blah. I don't like how he's writing, blah, blah, blah. I don't like this story. I don't like this one.
The creek sounds fun though.
Yeah. Find something a little more exciting, okay? There we go. Everything's about, let's see. Okay, how about picnic traditions? Hey, Christy love. How you doing? Did you see I wrote to you earlier in the chat? Hi, Ravenkind. Christy, I said I was thinking about you yesterday, wondering where you were. And I thought, well, I'm thinking about her. Maybe she'll show up. And you did. We'll read picnic traditions. Okay, guys? We bonded with our extended families over chilled watermelon and birthday cake. Oh, you wrote back and I didn't even see it. We have a nice little cozy reading group tonight, right, ladies? Tracy, Christy, Raven. Come on in, guys. Don't be shy. Here's a little picture. Show y'all. Back in the day. Here we go. During the 1950s and 60s, My dad's side of the family had their own picnic tradition. On the other hand, mom's side of the family had an entirely different picnic tradition. My father lived on dad's boyhood farm in northeastern Colorado. He grew up there with six sisters and six brothers. That's a lot, isn't it? He grew up with 12 siblings. Their father raised sugar beets, and he relied on his children to thin out the extra beets and later hoe out the weeds that got missed. One of my dad's sisters became a nun. She once told me, spending long hours out in the sugar beet field gave me plenty of time to think. That's when I decided to become a nun. Her convent was very strict. She wore a nun's habit and was only allowed to come home to visit her family every 5 years. Usually it was in the month of August. Every 5 years? I didn't know that. When Sister Leonette embarked on her 2-week vacation, she stepped aboard a streamliner. The train stopped in Sterling, where her parents lived. She stayed at their home during her visit. The Gertner family only had a picnic when she came back home. Since several of her sisters lived in another state, the picnic doubled as a family reunion. I remember Mom spent most of the morning of the picnic preparing a wide variety of foods. I've got 10 kids, so I feel like I need to bring a lot, she explained. In addition to food, we took paper plates, plastic cups, napkins, a cooler filled with Kool-Aid, and a long white watermelon. That was Dad's idea. He loved watermelon. I've never heard of a white watermelon. When we arrived at the park, lots of family were already gathered. Like Mom, the other ladies brought their share of food, so we had plenty to eat. I had fun getting reacquainted with my cousins who lived in Kansas. In the afternoon, the women watched the younger kids. The men and the older kids divided up into 2 softball teams. The Gertners loved to play softball. My dad was a very good athlete. When his bat connected with the softball, he hit it a country mile. I was proud of him. Hey, Jenny D1, there you are. I saw you come in chat tonight, but I wasn't chatting, my fingers get sore this hand because I do so much crafting. Oh, let me show you. Speaking of crafting, let me show you guys really quick a couple of my little shells I did tonight. What you think of this one? I do remember that movie, Christy Love. I still need to put the gloss on this, but isn't it pretty? Put some feathers on there. You like it? Like it, Raven? Crazy shells. You can laugh if you want. I don't care. Like them, Jenny? You can laugh. Keeps my mind occupied. Hey, LMN. Thank you, Daniel Cote. Isabel, I love that name. Okay. Oh, and this one. I put real shiny paint on there, and it has a couple of pearls, see? They're not quite dry, that's why you can see the glue, but that'll dry clear and you won't even see it. Oh, that's nice, Raven. Never heard of that, but that's a good idea. Isn't this pretty, though? Look at that, guys. Look at those colors. Okay. Get back to this. Thank you. Okay. I would say this woman should have brought a lot of food, with 10 kids. I'm glad she did think of that. Had fun getting reacquainted with my cousins who lived in Kansas. Thanks, Christy. In the afternoon, the women watched the younger kids. The men and the older kids divided up into 2 softball teams. The Gertners loved to play softball. My dad was a very good athlete. When his bat connected with the softball, he hit it a country mile. I was proud of him. After the game, we again filled our paper plates with food. The highlight of that meal was when Dad brought out the chilled watermelon. He cut slices off for anyone who wanted a piece. We kids enjoyed every juicy bite and then ended up a sticky mess. Before we left the picnic, Mom asked Sister Leonette what day she'd be free to come out to our farm to eat supper with us. When Sister Leonette got to our house, I was quite shy, as were my 9 siblings. It was a bit intimidating for us because of how she was dressed and the fact that she was a nun. She was a teacher at a parochial school and quickly got us over our nervousness. She was friendly and easy to talk to. Even though Mom fretted over cooking for Sister Leonette, we had plenty to eat, and it was delicious. It was nice having her as our supper guest. Dad then took her back to town to their parents' home. Mom's side, the Lambrecks were avid picnickers. They began the tradition of having a 4th of July picnic in 1963. For 56 consecutive years, they had a picnic on that day. Like Dad, Mom grew up in a large family. When we arrived at the park, many relatives were already there. My cousin Joy was born on the 4th of July. Traditionally, her mother baked her a huge birthday cake and brought it to the picnic. Everyone gathered around and sang happy birthday to her. After dinner, the women gathered the dirty dishes and walked to the lady's house closest to the park. There, they washed and dried the dishes. In the afternoon, groups of adults gathered around the picnic tables to play cards, while others played softball with the kids. Rarely did our family ever drive back into town to see the fireworks display. Still, we had a special 4th of July by attending the picnic. While the Gertners and the Lambrecks had different reasons for having picnics, coming together as a big family was the best part of all. Plenty of good food helped make the picnic special too. Really? Your first grade teacher, Sister Catherine Agnes, scared you? I bet. I know she would me too. I'm sure. Let's see. Got more 4th of July stories. Oh, remember Sandra D., James Darren, and Cliff Robertson starring Gidget, a Columbia picture. A little girl with big ideas. Sandra D. Let's see. Let's eat your fish and have it too. Should he or shouldn't he? The answer echoed through the years by Drew Coons. And here is a picture of him proudly displaying his catch that he'd been searching chasing all summer long. My 16th summer was all about fish. That is, it was all about catching fish. While other boys spent their teenage summers earning money or playing baseball, I chased fish. Largemouth bass, bluegills, catfish, and red eyes were in my dreams, awake or sleeping. But mostly, the dreams were about bass. My fishing tutors, outdoor sports magazines, glorified bass, and I became very good at catching the largemouths. Fish passion has even brought me fame and prizes, as I had won the Boy Scout fishing jamboree. Fortunately, my widowed mother owned an isolated cabin on a little river. On school nights, we stayed in town, but the cabin felt like home. Big trees walled the clear, cold river with green. In places, the running water was shallow enough to wade across. A mile below the cabin, a 20-foot dam for an old grist mill backed up the river into a serpentine lake. You could still see the big millstones, which before electricity had ground the local farmers' corn. In a little aluminum boat, I used rod and reel and trot lines to pull a lot of fish from that lake. Nearly every fish is released on today's TV fishing shows, but in those days, when you caught a fish, you ate it, and no fish tastes better than a bass. The white, tender flesh of a young bass simply can't be matched. Even with the lake, my greatest joy was fishing up the river. Wading stealthily upstream in a pair of old sneakers and cut-off blue jeans did not alert most fish to my coming. Delicately casting an artificial lure above a ripple by a log or in a pocket where fish might wait was a skill I learned through many hours of diligence. For some, the pleasure of practicing that art actually surpasses catching the fish, but that was not quite the case for this 16-year-old boy. Early that spring, a strong fish had grabbed my lure by a bed of water plants. To my utter amazement, a beautiful tawny bronze fish erupted from the water, jumping nearly a yard into the air. It was a smallmouth bass, the most elegant of all fighters, according to every outdoor magazine. I'd never seen one so large. The picture of that fish hanging in the air, twisting violently, remains in my mind. And the memory of my lure, shaken free and coming back at me, remains as well. Every day that summer, I chased that smallmouth bass on the river. I hooked it briefly once or twice. I even resorted to using live crayfish to try to trick that fish. But mostly, I just spooked it when I waded near. That smallmouth had learned who I was and what I wanted. Then the summer was over, and I instinctively knew that it was to be my last season of freedom on the river. Fall passed as well. Even the fish had called it a year. Next year, I would be at the university. There I would engage in the serious business of making something out of my life. And I hoped I would not disappoint my family and teachers. Near dark, one chilly December twilight, I went down to the riverbank. Mostly I wanted to feel the rod in my hands and hear the water. These were the last casts in the last days of my boyhood. The only spot with enough light remaining to cast was a place I had never seen fish before. But to my surprise, a big fish grabbed the lure. After a minute of tussle, the prized smallmouth bass was in my hands. The thought of eating it immediately came to my mind. Then a voice in my head said, "Let this one go. For the rest of your life, you can enjoy the thought of this fish and its descendants alive and free in this river." But youthful passions being what they are, the thought of tasting its sweet flesh was too much to give up. I killed, cooked, and ate the smallmouth. Before the dishes were cleaned, I felt sorrow. My worthy adversary was gone forever. For a moment of pleasure, it seems I had taken on a lifetime of regret. Inevitably, though, that fish helped to make me who I am. Wow, this fish did a lot for this kid. One fish is a small price for a teenager to learn such a powerful lesson before leaving home for college and an adventurous life. The newfound wisdom to make careful decisions is worth any fish. For those reasons, I no longer regret eating that prized smallmouth bass. And I think of how wonderful it is to imagine that fish's descendants living in the river. I'm a much older man now. My fingers fumble with fisherman's knots. My eyes squint to bait a hook. Keeping balanced on the slippery river rocks would be impossible. Yet my heart will always carry that summer on the river and that December of decision. Hi, Whisper. Okay, I'm going to see if you guys can match. We've got 10 songs here, okay? They're songs from 1963. Can you match these 1963 hit songs to their performers? Okay, My Boyfriend's Back. I'll say some names, okay? See if you get them. Paul and Paula, Jan and Dean, The Angels, Leslie Gore, Bobby Vinton, The Four Seasons, Peggy March, Jimmy Gilmer and the Fireballs, the Chiffons, and the Beach Boys. Which one is it, guys? And I'll mark it down. See if you guys get it right. My Boyfriend's Back. Nope, not the Chiffons, Element. Hi, Sammy. Paul and Paula, Jan and Dean, The Angels, Leslie Gore, Bobby Vinton, The Four Seasons, Peggy March, Jimmy Gilmer and the Fireballs, or the Beach Boys. We know it's not the Chiffons. We know it's not the Beach Boys. Anybody? For the women, we've got the Angels, Leslie Gore, and Peggy March. Anybody? Whisper. The Angels is right, Element. That's right. Put that right there. Okay, who sang Hey Paula? This one's kind of easy, I think. Remember that song? You're welcome. Have a good night. Have a good sleep, Raven. Paul and Paula, Jan and Dean, Leslie Gore, Bobby Vinton, Four Seasons, Peggy March, Jimmy Gilmer, Beach Boys, the Chiffons. Anybody? Mittens. You don't know? Hey Paula was Paul and Paula were the singers. A. Surfing USA. Everybody knows that one. Everybody. Right? You guys know that one, Surfing USA, don't you? Beach Boys, yes. How about Walk Like a Man? I know that one as well. Walk Like a Man. Come on, walk like a man. Walk like a man. Peggy Dean. Nope, not Bobby Vinton. That one is The Four Seasons. How about I Will Follow Him, Follow Him, wherever he may go. Ooh, I would have gotten that wrong, I think. Or wait, no, I think I would have gotten it right. No, I didn't. I wouldn't have. That is Peggy March. I Will Follow Him. How about Blue Velvet? She wore blue velvet. Yep, you got that one. That's a good song, isn't it? How about It's My Party and I'll Cry If I Want to? It's my party and I'll cry if I want to. You would cry too if it happened to you. You know that one? Nope, not Peggy Dean. There is no Peggy Dean, hon. It's Jan and Dean, but that's not. Hey, Brian Clan, but that's not the answer to It's My Party. I think you guys know that one. I bet Brian Clan knows. Element. Come on, guys. Don't tell me that I'm that old and you guys don't know these songs from 1963. You never listened to the oldies? It's My Party. That is Leslie Gore. You guys are really kids, aren't you? You already missed it, the Brian Clan. Who sings Surf City? Surf City, here I come, here we come. Yep, this is Mittens. Surf City. That one is, Mittens, please, please, please. That one is, that one. Surf City is Jan and Dean. How about Sugar Shack? Gotta get to that Sugar Shack. Well, honey, to that Sugar Shack. Oh, you're being so loving. That is Jimmy Gilmer and the Fireballs. I don't think you guys would get that one. And then the last one, He's So Fine. You guys have to get that one, or at least LMN does. Come on now, girl. Come on. Sugar Shack. No, Sugar Balls. Come on. It's the Chiffons. Okay, let's find another story. Come on now, baby. Let's see if we can find some exciting. Oh, I think I read that one before. Let me find a scary one that I might still have here on the phone. Let me find one. I'm going to shut the light on. Okay. There we go. Let's find one of the scary ones. Don't have a lot of them left, though. Kindle won't let you buy and download. You have to do it on Amazon. And I get too confused. And I do have a book on here, but like some of the stories are really, they're too inappropriate. The scenes in them, like are rated R or X or something. Yeah. So I'm having a hard time trying to find some scary stories. Um, see, this one I can't buy unless I figure out how to do it. Okay, let's see. This is ghost stories, but I don't know. We'll just go with spooky South Carolina. Okay. Spooky South Carolina. Let me get to one of the stories we didn't read. Okay, this one's called Treasure Chest from Foley Island, South Carolina. Their orders were quite clear. The soldiers were to politely round up everyone living on the island and remove them so that the Union Army could set up a fort there in preparation for what was sure to become a civil war. It was not a task that would make him popular among the islanders, but the soldier undertook it to the best of his abilities, going politely from house to house, from cottage to backwoods shack, to inform the residents that they were being evacuated for their own protection. He quietly swore to himself as he marched from place to place in his heavy Union uniform, swatting at mosquitoes and longing for his home in the north, where days were warm enough to enjoy without ever becoming too hot. The next cottage he came to, as if a stiff breeze. The next cottage he came to looked as if a stiff breeze would knock it over. He had hardly set foot on the porch when an old woman with a wild shock of graying hair came out and demanded his business. Ooh, that could be me, maybe, but I just got it dyed. Let's see. He explained that it was his duty to evacuate her, and she grew belligerent until he reminded her that he was under orders from the U.S. government. Then he sighed and sagged. Then she sighed and sagged a bit, looking 10 years older in a matter of seconds. I've lived my whole life here, she said, seen a lot of things in my time. Terrible, you knocked that one down. Mittens, terrible hurricanes, shipwrecks, fever epidemics, scandals, elopements, weddings, deaths, the whole epic of life lived out on one island. I've never seen pirates on these shores, but I've even seen pirates on these shores back in the day. Tears came to her eyes, and the soldier felt a wave of sorrow pass through him. He wondered how he would feel if the government forced him out of his home. Take whatever time you need, ma'am, he said. I'll wait. The old woman's eyes focused on the young soldier, and she blinked and said, Where are my manners? Let me get you a drink of lemonade, young man. Then I'll pack up my things. She bustled into her dilapidated cottage and emerged a moment later with 2 glasses of lemonade. They sat on the porch, and the young soldier asked her to tell him about the pirates she'd encountered in her time. Now that's a story, the old woman chuckled. I was a bit of a girl then, playing on the beach, when I saw the pirate ship heading into shore. They were coming in fast, with their black sails and a flag with a skull on it. I hid in the palm trees and watched the ship anchor. They came ashore in a rowboat, 2 sailors and a man in a captain's hat with a long black beard. They came ashore carrying several heavy trunks and buried them while I watched. She took a sip of lemonade and continued. The captain kept scanning the horizon with his telescope as the men dug the hole, as if he were expecting someone to arrive. When the last of the chests lay at the bottom of the hole, the captain grabbed a shovel and knocked one of the sailors into the hole. Whipping out his pistol, he shot the fallen man and then shot his comrade. I was horrified and hid my eyes, afraid that the captain would shoot me if he saw me watching. What did you do? Hi, help me, Rhonda. Hi, Julie W. Hi, Joyce Miller. Aw, thank you, the Bryan clan. You're so sweet. I miss you too. I love that you've been coming around a little more. Scooter Pie. I love that name. Deb Vancouver came up with that. It's the witching hour. Yes. Please smash the thumbs for all the spirits. That's cute. Whisper. Okay. After a few minutes, I heard shoveling noises, the old woman said. When I looked up again, the pirate captain was filling in the hole. Then he rowed back to his ship and they set sail. As they left the island, I saw another ship approaching. It had a British flag. I think they must have captured the pirates because the captain never returned for their chest. Did you dig up the treasure? Asked the soldier. The old woman laughed. The ghost of the dead pirates guard that treasure, young man. Folks tried for years to dig up that treasure, but the ghosts chased them all away. I'm the only one alive now who remembers the story. She sighed, picked up both empty glasses, and went to pack her things. As the young soldier escorted her away from her home, she told him where the pirate chests were buried. Just so I am not the only one in the world who knows, she said, as he helped her into the boat with her things. The soldier became rather obsessed by the story as he assisted in the evacuation of the island residents. Finally, he confided the tale to one of his friends in the regiment over their evening meal. What are you waiting for? His friend demanded. Let's go get that gold. How do you know there's gold in the chest? The soldier asked. The old woman didn't see what was inside. The men were pirates. Of course it was gold, his friend said. After some discussion, the men decided to go treasure hunting that night. They purloined some shovels from the camp and headed out after everyone was asleep, carefully skirting around the sentry on duty. It was a hot, sticky night, and there was no breeze to cool them as they tramped along the beach, following the old woman's directions. Even the sea was calm, and the waves made no sound as they lapped the shore. I don't feel good about this, the soldier murmured to his friend. The stillness of the night was making him uneasy. His ears strained to catch a sound. Hi, coffee and donuts. Hey, Julie W. His ears strained to catch a sound, any sound, other than the crunch of the sand underfoot. But he heard nothing. Not a creature stirred, not an insect buzzed. Even the sound of their footsteps was muted. The silence deepened as they came to the grove of trees where a child once hid from a band of pirates. A sliver of a moon had risen in the east, and a zigzagging line of light crossed the ocean toward them, like a skeletal finger pointing at them accusingly. The two men started to dig at the place where the old woman had said the chests were buried. It was hard work, but instead of sweating in the hot summer air, the soldier grew colder and colder as he dug deeper into the sand. His chilled hands shook on the handle of the shovel, and his teeth started chattering. The sound of the shovel digging in the sandy soil came so faintly to his ears that it might have been taking place a mile away rather than right under his nose. Suddenly, his shovel struck something hard. He dug excitedly at the object, thinking it was the edge of the treasure chest. And suddenly, he was looking into two empty eye sockets and part of a nasal cavity. It was a skull. The soldier backed up a step and bumped into his friend, who turned to look at him. The top of the skull glimmered faintly in the eerie light of the moon, and then, all around them, something started to moan. Here's an illustration. Sorry, it gets the reflection of the chat. It was so deep, it was more of a hum. It was so deep that it was more of a hum than a moan. Ooh, ee. And it made the soldier's teeth ache, but it grew rapidly in volume and pitch. Oh, oh. Hey, that's what it says. Look, it says, oh, oh. The noise was so loud it made his ears pound. The soldier clapped his hands to his head and backed away from the skull until his back hit the wall of the pit. His friend crouched beside him, head buried under his arms. The air grew frigid so that every breath they took turned to a cloudy mist, wetting their faces and frosting their eyebrows. "Oh," howled the spectral voice. The soldier thought his head would burst with the vibration. And then the skull began to glow, and the moan became a roar as a huge figure sprang to life before them, dressed in the long coat and trousers worn 100 years ago by men who lived on the sea. A bandolier was strapped across his chest, and a sailor's hat sat menacingly low over his brow. The pirate took one look at the two men cowering in the pit and drew his sword. The pirate was glowing with a blue-white light, and the soldier could see the other side of the pit right through his body. But the sword was most definitely real. The soldier found out the hard way when the pirate aimed a blow at him and nearly cut off his ear. With a shout of fear, the soldier leapt for the edge of the pit. The soldier never could figure out how he managed to levitate 7 feet without apparent effort, but within seconds, he was out of the pit and running down the beach with a glowing specter pursuing him. He felt the whistle of a sword just miss the back of his neck as he ran for his life. He was bathed in the blue light of his supernatural pursuer as he ran, and the light kept up with him no matter how much speed he attained. The soldier heard his friend shouting behind him, but he didn't stop or look back. Seconds later, his friend raced past him, pursued by a demon shape that looked like a 6-legged bull calf with glowing red eyes. It was a plat eye, the name the locals gave to such an apparition, which they said was the transformed spirit of a dead pirate. The soldier could do nothing to help his friend, who looked distinctly ragged in the rear end due to a bite from the plat eye. He had his own problems in the person of the untransformed ghost of the pirate hunting him down with the sword. He felt another swish behind him, and his head felt suddenly lighter as the ghost cut off his ponytail. The soldier put on another burst of speed, and suddenly the blue light fell away from him. He risked a look back and saw the pirate hovering about 3 feet above the beach, his sword held menacingly in front of him. The soldier nearly cannoned into a palm tree as he fled in the opposite direction, determined to put as much space as possible between himself and the pirate before he lost more than his hair. I can't blame him. I think I'd be doing the same thing. Ahead of him, the soldier saw a man lying on the beach, curled up into a tight ball. The plat-eyed circled twice around the figure and then tried to butt the man into the water. The man burrowed deeper into the sand. With a final bellow of rage, the plat-eye vanished into a puff of sulfurous smoke. Gasping with relief, the soldier staggered over to help his friend up. His friend rolled over onto his back and gazed up at the soldier in the shimmering light of the moon. "Never again," he gasped. "That treasure can stay buried as far as I'm concerned." He sat up and then blinked in surprise as he looked at the soldier. "Did you cut your hair?" The soldier glared at him. "I didn't cut my hair," he said meaningfully. His friend's eyes widened as he took in the soldier's meaning. "The ghost did that?" he asked. The soldier nodded grimly. "That's the last time I mess around with buried treasure," the soldier said fervently, as his friend stood up and rubbed ruefully at his torn trousers. "Let's get back to camp." They didn't go back for their shovels. Okay, let's see. I know I read this one right here. Let's see. Read one more, and then that'll be it. I'm getting sleepy. I hope some of you guys are getting sleepy. Unless you're somewhere where it's the morning. Let's see. Okay, I know I read this one, the minor. Hold on, get one more. I don't think we read this one. Okay, Boo Hag. This is Beaufort, South Carolina. Larky, you made it. Getting sleepy too, Brian Clan? You're a couple hours behind me. It's 3:21 a.m. Why are you over by you? It's 1:21. Shouldn't be that tired. Oh wait, you're probably working, aren't you? Remember Brian Clan? I'd always say, "Oh, she's in chat. That means she's at work right now." We had some fun times, huh? Yeah, I know. I'm just teasing you. Okay. Ever since he was a little tyke, playing at his granny's knee, Daniel had heard about the Boo Hag that rode a man that was sleeping, stealing his every breath away until his life was sucked clean out of him. According to Granny, Boo Hags had no skin, and they gleamed all red and gory, with their veins and arteries pulsing beneath flailed muscle. To hide among humans, They stole a victim's skin and used it for as long as it held out, wearing it as one might wear clothing. Of course, they removed the skin before going riding. The hag entered a victim's home through a small crack or hole. Then it positioned itself over the sleeping victim and sucked their breath, rendering the victims helpless and inducing a deep, dream-filled sleep. Often the hag left its victim alive since it wanted to harvest the victim's energy as long as possible. But when the victim struggled, the hag stole their skin, leaving the victim to suffer. After sucking the victim's energy all night, the hag flew off, since it had to be in its skin by dawn or be forever trapped without skin. Comforting story before bed. When Daniel was a little boy, he believed every word of the story and kept a broom next to his bedside every night to make sure the boo hag, who was obsessed with counting, would be so captivated by all the bristles to count on the head of that broom that she'd leave him alone. But that was when he was a small boy, before the slaves were freed by Mr. Lincoln. Now he was a grown man and had gone to the Penn School on St. Helena Island as a free man, hallelujah, and had learned to be a blacksmith. These days, Daniel was working hard at his very own smithy. He made nails and wheels and did fancy metal work. And he shod all the horses for miles around. Where's Alicia? We got horses. No, we don't have nightmares. Daniel earned himself a good living, but it wasn't all work for him. He played hard too. Not so hard that he lost all his cash. No, sir. But he enjoyed drinking with his buddies at the local bar, and he squired more than one pretty young lady to the local dances. Daniel had no time to spare for the silly old legends that his granny, God rest her soul, had believed in. There weren't no such thing as a boo hag. It was just a story told to frighten the kiddies into behaving themselves. When Daniel was a strapping man in his early 20s, a new family moved to Beaufort. They had a beaut of a daughter with sparkling eyes and sassy ways. Nellie had all the fellows in Beaufort panting after her within a week of setting foot in the place. But she was a picky sort and encouraged all of them equally. Daniel heard about the beauty long before he set eyes on her. His customers came into the smithy while he was hammering away at horseshoes and talked Daniel's ear off about Nellie. Daniel listened thoughtfully, but didn't say much. Oh, thank you, Brian Clan. Thank you for keeping me awake. This is supposed to help you sleep. Now you'll have nightmares. Thank you. Really sweet of you, Shorty Shoes. The cemetery field trips. I want to go again soon. Coffee and donuts. I don't know why I'm into them right now. The old grave markers. Something, I don't know. Just into them right now. Let's see. Where do we go here? Daniel listened thoughtfully, but didn't say much. Nellie sounded like a real smart woman, but it was his private opinion that the lady was spoiled by all the attention from the fellows. He didn't reckon he'd enter the ranks of men fighting over Nellie. There were plenty of girls in Beaufort that were smart as well as pretty. He'd keep on squiring them to the local dances and let the other fellas fight over Nellie. But that was before Daniel saw Nellie for the first time. He was standing next to the back pew of the church on the Sunday after Nellie's family moved to town, and his heart leapt straight out of his chest. Uh-oh, what happened? Oh, I guess nothing. That was freaky. It's like it went off, but it didn't. Let's see. His heart leapt straight out of his chest when he saw the lovely girl standing in the doorway of the church. Daniel's legs gave out on him, and he sat down hard on the pew beside him, his mouth agape. Lucky for him, everyone was swarming around Nellie, and no one saw his predicament. By the time Nellie and her folks walked to their pew, Daniel was sitting real calm-like, reading his Bible. He didn't look up at Nellie as she passed, a fact that nettled the pretty girl. She snuck glances all through the service at the handsome blacksmith sitting in the last pew and wondered why he wasn't looking at her like all the other fellows were doing. Nellie had heard almost as much about the popular Daniel as he'd heard about her in the week she'd been in town. She looked forward to adding him to her conquest, and here he was ignoring her completely. And him so handsome, he made Nellie's head swim. It was maddening. Nellie heard not one word of the sermon that Sunday. Daniel figured his best chance of winning Nellie was to play hard to get, so he acknowledged his introduction to her with a polite nod and then turned all his charm on her widowed aunt. Then he left all the other men swarming around Nellie and walked home with a pretty local girl who was training at Penn School to be a midwife. Nellie's mouth dropped open, and she turned to her widowed aunt and pouted, "What a flirt that man is. I hope the boo hag finds him and gives him a proper ride." Nellie's aunt gave her a penetrating look and said, "Shame on you, girl. What a thing to wish on a good, honest man, just because he ain't patting after you." Nellie looked startled, then ashamed. She glanced around the churchyard to see if anyone had heard her jealous words, but her aunt was the only one near her. "I didn't mean it," she mumbled to the air in general, just in case a boo hag was lurking among the moss-strewn oak trees. "I should hope not," her aunt scolded her. "Now choose one of your beaux and come on home. Your mama will have dinner on the table before you even left the churchyard." Nellie sent one last jealous look after Daniel before choosing one of her beaux to escort her home. But she thought about the elusive blacksmith all the way back to her house and for many weeks to come. Daniel stuck to his plan, and he escorted all the other girls to the parties and church socials, leaving Nellie to the panting hordes of bachelors that wooed the lovely newcomer. Nellie was in a tizzy about the whole thing, and in spite of her aunt's warning, she kept on wishing that a boo hag would take the proud young blacksmith down a peg or two. Well, just the one guy that she can't get, she wants to have this boo hag go after him. Oh, whisper. Ugh. I sent them the Bryan clan. About a month later, Daniel, Nellie, and all their friends gathered together near the water's edge for a church picnic. Daniel was paying court to a couple of pretty farmers' daughters, pushing them back and forth on a swing he'd cobbled together from a few lengths of rope and an old board. Nellie was surrounded by swains. She divided her attention between sweet-talking the bachelors into bringing her treats from the picnic tables and glaring at Daniel, who was telling an amusing tale to the farmers' daughters and their friends. "I wish a boo hag would ride him right out of town," she muttered under her breath. Then she forced a smile as one of her swains came eagerly to her, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. Lurking near the water's edge a few yards from Nellie was a boo hag, disguised as an old washerwoman. The boo hag was hungry. She had ridden a man to death down in Georgia a few weeks ago, but had no luck finding another victim since then. Hearing Nellie's careless words, the boo hag eyed Daniel thoughtfully. Here was a strapping young man, white of shoulder and strong of arm. He would make a good feast. The old washerwoman watched the blacksmith thoughtfully from her hiding place by the river as he wandered through the fields, joking with the bachelors, talking piously with the minister, flirting with the girls. At last, Nellie, dispirited by Daniel's indifference, wandered away from her bows and stood looking out over the river, wondering what she could do to make the handsome blacksmith like her. Daniel, who was watching her from afar, came casually down to the water's edge, a few feet from the hidden boo hag. His heart was pounding against his ribs as he approached, though he kept his face cool and composed. This was it. He knew it in his bones. "What's troubling you, Nellie?" he asked. Startled, the girl whirled to face the tall, handsome man who'd caught her fancy from the moment she laid eyes on him in church. "Why should I be troubled?" Nellie asked, her heart thundering so loud she thought Daniel must hear it. "It's a lovely day, and everyone's having a good time at the picnic." "Everyone's having a good time except you," Daniel corrected her. "Why are you down here all alone, Nellie?" He took her hand. "Can you tell me why, when I look into your eyes, I see a woman alone, even when you're surrounded by beaux? Can you tell me why, Nellie?" And Nellie, looking up into the blacksmith's dark eyes, discovered she wasn't alone anymore. She would never be alone again. Daniel walked Nellie home from the church picnic that evening, and it was quite clear to the other bachelors that Nellie had completely forgotten all her other beaux. The pretty newcomer was smitten. The other fellas could gnash their teeth and curse the blacksmith all they wanted, but Nellie didn't notice. From that moment on, she was spoken for. Daniel was walking on air when he headed home after kissing Nellie on her porch. He never noticed the old washerwoman trailing behind him. He felt no urge to buy blue paint as he passed the hardware shop, and he left his old broom down in the smithy when he climbed upstairs to bed. He had only been asleep a few minutes when the washerwoman whirled and twirled in a frenzy of motion until her borrowed skin fell away, revealing the red blood vessels and flailed flesh of a boo hag. She magicked herself small enough to fit through Daniel's keyhole and floated inside the blacksmith's bedroom to lay herself across his mouth and steal a part of every breath he took. And with each breath, she took a piece of his soul. Daniel's dreams were filled with visions of Nellie that night. He woke dazed and happy, though for some reason he was feeling rather more tired than usual. He put his unsteadiness down to the giddiness of love and got to work down in the smithy. But his hands were not steady on his tools, and he had more difficulty than usual calming the horses. They pulled away from him, nostrils flaring, as if there were a stench on him that they found distressing. It troubled Daniel enough that he heated water for himself that evening and took a long bath before heading out to see Nellie. They sat on the porch with her family, watching the sun set on the river and singing old songs. Daniel's voice kept faltering. He was short of breath, and Nellie thought he looked a little pale. All that week and all the next, the boo hag visited Daniel's room each night, sucking the breath and life out of him little by little. Daniel dreamed strange dreams all night. During the day, his eyes were glassy and feverish. His hands were unsteady, and he grew pale under his tan. His big body trembled as he stood, and he found his tools harder and harder to lift. Horses reared when he came near them, something they had never done before. Nellie was alarmed by the radical change in her beau. She insisted on calling the doctor to come look at Daniel. The doctor shook his head and prescribed a tonic to be drunk twice a day, but it didn't help Daniel. He kept losing weight, and he could hardly catch his breath. It was all he could do to keep up with the easiest of his smithing tasks. The heavy work was almost beyond him. Nellie's old aunt was away visiting kinfolk up in Charleston when Daniel started courting Nellie, but she returned to Beaufort at the end of the second week. Right around the time Daniel was took so bad, it looked like he'd have to give up smithing until the mysterious disease was cured. After interviewing Daniel about his illness, the old aunt pulled Nellie aside and said, "Nellie, I want you to run to the hardware store and get some blue paint. Be quick about it. There's no time to spare." "Blue paint? Why do you want blue paint?" Nellie asked her old aunt, wide-eyed. "Think, girl," the aunt scolded her pretty niece. "It was you who wished a boo hag on that young man. Now he's got one, and it's killing him. Everyone knows the only way to keep a boo hag out of a house is to paint the windows and doorways with blue paint. A boo hag can't fly through a window or door that's painted blue. Be quick now, while Daniel's still talking to your pa." Nellie was stricken to the bone. She remembered all the times she'd muttered against Daniel, hoping a boo hag would ride him because he wasn't paying attention to her. Then she thought of the way Daniel was losing strength and could never catch his breath. She knew her aunt was right. Nellie flew down the road to the hardware store and bought a can of blue paint and a brush. Then she slipped over to the smithy and painted all the doors and windows blue. All the time she was painting, Nellie racked her brain, trying to remember what else she could do to chase away the boo hag. As soon as she finished her task, Nellie hurried back home, slipping in the door just as supper was served. Over dinner, she caught her aunt's eye and nodded to her to let her know the job was done. Daniel went back after supper, walking stiff and weary as if he were an old man of 70. 70 is not old. I'm going to be there in 3 years. It is scary, though. 70. Instead of a strapping young lad in his pride, Nellie watched him go with her heart in her mouth. "Oh, please let the blue paint work," she prayed as she climbed into bed. If it didn't, Daniel was sure to die. The boo hag had ridden him hard for 2 weeks, and he could hardly stand on his own. Nellie woke a little before dawn the next morning, her heart pounding. She was sure she had missed something at Daniel's house. She reviewed her work in her mind. She painted the door of the smith and both windows, and the 2 big windows on the second story, front and back, the little windows on the side. And then she remembered she'd forgotten the tiny window in the loft over Daniel's bedroom, the window that was always kept open a crack, so the tiny owl Daniel had rescued as a boy and kept as a pet could fly in and out of the house whenever it chose. Nellie leapt out of bed, threw on a wrapper, and ran downstairs to wake her auntie. She was almost incoherent with fear as she told her aunt what she'd left undone. A moment later, the 2 grim-faced women hurried down the road toward the smithy, hair a tangle and robes flapping around their bare feet. Old Auntie was clutching a keg of sea salt in her gnarled hands. Pray God we are in time, she said. When they reached the smithy, the aunt told Nellie to grab the old broom standing against the wall. Wielding it like a sword, the two women advanced up the steps to the upper room and banged open the door. The room was gently lit by the fire in the hearth. Daniel was sleeping on the bed, his handsome face lit by an unnatural smile. Hovering over him was a gleaming boo-hag, all flailed muscle and bone and hideously pulsing arteries. When the women burst into the room, the boo-hag whirled upward with a shriek of rage. Then her eyes fixed on the besom in Nellie's hands. A boo-hag cannot resist besom, B-E-S-O-M. I bet that's got to be a typo. It's got to be broom. A boo-hag cannot resist counting the straws in a broom when it sees one, and the evil creature swept down from the ceiling and seized the broom, yanking it away from Nellie and pulling the brush closer to her face. On the bed, Daniel woke with a start and stared at him in amazement as the sight of the boo-hag hovering in the center of the room and of his beloved and her auntie, clad in long white nightgowns and wrappers, confronting the evil, pulsating red creature. He sat bolt upright with a shout of his own. The boo-hag looked up, distracted by Daniel's sudden movement, and old auntie seized her chance. Stepping forward, she threw the entire keg of salt over the boo-hag, where it hovered with broom in its gleaming red hand. The boo-hag gave a howl of agony, the salt burning through her exposed muscle and bone. She sailed desperately upward, trying to brush away the salt, making for the small window which she'd entered in the loft. If she could immerse herself in the river, the effects of the salt would be mitigated and the boo-hag would survive to feast upon another victim. But at that moment, the first rays of the sun shimmered across the horizon, streaming in the little window of the loft and piercing right through the boo-hag. Boo-hag gave a shriek of agony and burst into flames. The salt on her skinless body sizzled and sparked, and then the boo-hag disappeared in a puff of smoke and fiery brimstone. Nellie gave a heartfelt cry of relief and joy. She raced across the room and flung herself into Daniel's arms, weeping with relief. Old auntie followed at a more sedate pace to chaperone the pair and to explain to the puzzled Daniel what the true cause of his ailment was. Daniel recovered his strength rapidly once the boo-hag was dead. He and Nellie were married a fortnight later in the brick church where they first met. Nellie faithfully promised old auntie that she'd never wish a boo-hag on another person as long as she lived. And Daniel, well, he went back to his childhood custom of keeping a broomstick beside his bed just in case. Whisper. That's cute. Well, thank you guys for coming. Let's see oh, good night, Brian Clan. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. And hope you guys have a good night or a good day if it's morning where you are. Okay? See you guys. Yes, get that keg of salt. Keep it by your bed. Keep away nightmares. Bye, guys. Thank you. Thank you.